Hi. Hi, everyone. So, we have Achintya Paradkar here with us. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Parth Chavda. I'm a second year student at NSUT and I'm a community moderator at Cuvette Tech. And today we have Achintya Paradkar with us. Uh, Let me just give a brief introduction of him. He is a quantum researcher at the Chalmers University, Sweden. Achintya, can you please tell us more about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Parth. So, hi everyone. To begin with, I'm a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I have some few years of job experience at Tata Technologies, and then I moved to Belgium for my master's. I have master's in nanoscience and nanotechnology, and currently I'm pursuing my PhD. So, I'm not a full-time researcher yet, but I'm a doctoral candidate here at Chalmers. And my PhD is in quantum sensing. So I'm working in a subfield of quantum technology, more of which we will be discussing today. And yeah, along with that, I'm also doing certain other side activities where I do some educational activities on quantum technology, spread some awareness, and do some informal courses on different topics. So yeah, that's my journey up until now.
Great, great. That's amazing. And one normal question that suddenly arises in all of our mind is that how did that transition from a bachelor's in mechanical
Mhm,
how did that
mhm.
transition from that happen to a PhD scholar in quantum computing?
Yeah, that's actually quite a diverse turn. So basically, I've always been fascinated with physics, especially thermodynamics and material science and those aspects, which actually motivated me to take mechanical. But then during job, I realized that it's more of design engineering rather than R&D, which is what I wanted to pursue. So after a few years, then I realized that yeah, I should go for masters and pursue something in research, but I was not quite sure as to what. I did a bit of research, and then it's all about aligning your passion with what is available, what career opportunities exist. And then it was quite a brave step to basically take a jump into something completely unknown, because I did my master's in nanoscience, which has nothing to do with mechanical engineering per se. So everything was pretty much new to me. But then the reason for choosing nanoscience, first thing, it's cutting edge, and second thing, it's also it's quite interdisciplinary, and that is what I like. It is not just one branch per se, because when I was studying nanoscience, it was nanophysics, nanochemistry, nanomaterials, nanobiotechnology, so pretty much everything. And it was quite a broad field, and that breadth is what fascinated me the most. And then I specialized a little bit more into nanophysics and devices, did some internship at IMEC in quantum computing. I liked the field of quantum technology as such. And then I pursued for my PhD. So PhD was quite, inevitable at that point.
Right, so physics was your like forte.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So yeah, amazing. So you talked about the career opportunities that you saw, and how your PhD was inevitable. So how did you like choose at that point? Like, what was the choice that you made? Like, what was the basis of the choice that you made? Right, see, I have to do PhD, and quantum computing is the way to go.
Mhm,
So how did you decide that this specific field? You talked about
mhm.
nanophysics,
Yeah,
nanobio,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
biochemistry.
Absolutely.
So
So yeah, I mean, as I said, that within the purview of nanoscience, there are a lot of subfields. Actually, there's these 2D materials, for example, that is gaining a lot of attention. There's a lot happening in molecular biology and various other fields, even nanochemistry and nanomaterials. The reason for choosing quantum technology, first of all, was basically the fascination with quantum technology itself. So later on, when I'll present a little talk on this subject, I will touch a little bit upon this phenomena of quantum. It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, and you know reading something in book is one thing, but then when you actually see those things happening in the real life, it's quite amazing. And that is what actually motivated me to go towards experimental physics rather than theory. Because yeah, I mean, in theory everything looks fine, you can draw matrices and everything looks brilliant, but when you're doing it in real life, the challenges are completely different, and realizing that is fun of its own. And then within quantum technology, you have computing, sensing, communication. You have lots of branches. I did my internship in quantum computing, but my current PhD is in quantum sensing. That field, it's like, when I was applying for my PhD, I was quite open to everything in quantum technology. But then this particular topic of my professor really fascinated me, because it has applications in fundamental physics, where you're testing the domains of we're basically testing the limits of quantum physics, like how big can you make quantum, basically. So now quantum is all about electrons and photons and these elementary particles, but you never see, like, your cell phone being in a superposition state. So why not, like, at what point does quantum break, and does gravity has any a role to play in that, things like that. So it has application in that domain, and that's really fascinating, because then it's like the frontiers of physics itself.
So it's about the upcoming applications in the technological fields and all of that.
Both fundamental
Gotcha.
physics as well as technological. So in technology, my PhD has applications in, say, navigation, satellite navigation,
Oh,
defense, for example,
defense.
metrology. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Now, another generic question.
Hmm.
We can pursue PhD over here in India, and as well
Hmm.
as from where you are doing Sweden. So what
Absolutely.
was the basis of that choice?
So that is, I would say, about technological maturity. So when it comes to, say, European universities or even American universities, they have been researching the field of quantum technology for quite some time, and by now they have become a lot mature in their lab facilities and everything, and then they already have a lot of professors who are working in this field, whereas India is still emerging, so as to say. So whatever is happening in India is still not as cutting edge as we would expect it to be, but India is still pacing up, and I'm sure in the coming few years India will be on the leading front for sure. And then second thing, it's also about research funding. So I mean, in 2020, actually, India announced a huge budget for quantum computing, or quantum technology rather, but previously it was not there. And then funding plays a huge role in research. So in Europe, the funding is really, really large, and then you can actually do experimental physics, for which you really need a lot of money, and which was previously not available in India, and that's why many researchers were only in the theory aspect.
That is something we are coping up with
Yeah,
research thinking. Yeah, I totally relate with that. Awesome. I think you can begin with your presentation now, and then we'll take
great.
some doubts that we have from the audiences.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
So,
Awesome.
mm, mhm. I'm not sure if you all can see my slides presented. Ah, sorry, I was clicking the wrong. Yeah, is it on a full screen mode now? Can you see the presentation?
Let me check once. I don't think the slide is visible yet.
It's not.
No,
Uh,
it's not.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Oh, that's weird. At least can you see the PowerPoint, or can you see anything on my screen? Because I believe I'm sharing. Because this is quite new even to me. So
Let me
sorry
check
about that.
actually. Um,
Ah, wait, my bad, my bad. I think I'm sharing now.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. So sorry about that. Okay. So hello everyone. This is a
Okay.
very short, brief talk on careers in quantum technology. I am Achintya Paradkar, a PhD candidate in quantum technology at Chalmers University. So this talk, as you can see, it's about careers in quantum technology. So it won't be anything technical or technological at all. Um, I would just lightly touch upon the physics behind it, and then move on to the careers part. So the talk is divided mainly into three parts. First, where I just briefly touch upon what this buzzword of quantum is. Second, why is it fascinating from a more application and industrial point of view, on a both global scale as well as in India. And then I'll move towards the education and career part, and then discuss like how engineering students can actually be a part of this field. So okay, let's begin. So yeah, the word quantum in itself has a lot of hype to itself, and we usually see the word quantum used in everyday conversations as a like tech jargon, so as to say, even in sci-fi movies and whatnot. So that makes us think like, what exactly is this quantum, and like, what's the fascination with it? So here's the thing. First of all, quantum in itself is a physical phenomena that was discovered during the 20th century by people like Niels Bohr and all of these, which is something extremely counterintuitive, and that is what makes quantum so unique and so fascinating. So you have phenomena like wave particle duality. Most of you might have heard that matter is both wave and particle. You have discrete energy levels, which was quite new, which cannot be explained using Maxwell's equations. Then you have barrier tunneling, where a particle can just pass through a barrier, for example. And using these three different phenomena, people already came up with a bunch of technologies which we already know, and you might be surprised to hear these technologies. So this is known as the first quantum revolution. The technologies first thing are transistors. So all your computers, smartphones, all of these work on the aforementioned phenomena of discrete energy levels and whatnot. The whole of semiconductor industry, lasers, LEDs, GPS systems, CCDs, your CCD cameras and memory chips and all those, your RAM, MRIs, for example, solar cells, all of these require understanding of quantum mechanics. Without quantum mechanics, none of these technology could have been possible. And this constitutes the first quantum revolution. So this means that quantum is not something extraordinarily fascinating, something that is only there in the sci-fi movies and novels. No, quantum technology is right around you right now. You're actually uh, looking at it right now in the form of your smartphones and laptops. But there's more to the quantum world. So as I like to call it, it's like a Alice in the Wonderland, right? It's the more you explore, the more things come up, and scientists found even more fascinating phenomena in this quantum world, which was quantum superposition, where a particle can be in both positions at the same time or both states at the same time. You had quantum entanglement, where you can uh, entangle these states of different particles to each other, no matter how far apart they are. And this is used in applications like quantum communication, for example. You have quantum coherence, you have quasi particles, you have quantum spin. I'm not going to go into the details of these, but all these different quantum jargon opens up a huge array of new applications, new technological applications that we will be seeing in the upcoming days, which will be called as the second quantum revolution. So the second quantum revolution then comprises of quantum computing. This is the biggest buzzword that you hear these days, where you have big players like Google, IBM doing a lot of research and coming up with these qubits, quantum bits, and doing computation that is practically impossible for supercomputers, or it would take like thousands of years for a supercomputer to achieve. You have quantum sensing, where you are actually sensing at the level of quantum limits, both in space, time, force, or all kinds of physical parameters. You have quantum communication, which can be used to create such kind of communication that is physically impossible to break. You cannot decrypt it. You cannot hack this type of communication. Then you have quantum imaging, you have quantum simulation. So I'm not going to go to again too much into detail of any of these, but these are again various different fields of quantum technology that will be coming in the future days, and you will be hearing a lot about these. So Yeah, so these are this is what constitutes the second quantum revolution, and this is only just the surface. So within each of these, there are again a lot of subfields. Say in quantum computing, there's superconducting qubits, ion traps, spin qubits, and lots more. Same goes with quantum sensing. So then, yeah, this is the thing. Like, yeah, okay, I hear a lot of quantum everywhere. So is it just like you're just slapping the word quantum in front of everything? Is it like that? So no, this is not just like you have some computing, you make it a little bit faster, and then you call it quantum computing. That is not how it is. This is a completely um, different technology, different type of technology, so as to say, that has a different set of applications. So I won't go into the applications too much, but the applications can range anywhere from medical, defense, material science, and lots more. Say, uh, even like normal computing of big data and stuff like that. So one example that I can give you is for these drugs that we discover in pharmaceutical companies. For some really complex drugs, you need to understand how the proteins fold, and for that quantum computing can be a best way to find an optimal solution. So with this, okay, so yeah, there are all these different quantum technologies that have some fascinating cool applications that we will see in the future. Where are we right now, and how like when can we expect it? I don't want to give any dates, but I'll just give you a general roadmap. So, in the quantum world, in the second quantum revolution, we have atomic clocks, which is quite already developed. Then we have quantum sensors, which we will be seeing in the coming days. Then quantum communication, and finally quantum computing. So, to put like roughly where we are, um, I have just like created a very schematic bar graph here of various aspects. So for every technology, you need to know first the physics, the theory behind it. Then you need to know the engineering and the technological aspect, and then finally the market. So for atomic clocks, the physics is already well known, the engineering is quite developed, and the market is already there. So you have atomic clocks already in function that you use for your drones, for your autonomous vehicles, and for all these different applications. So atomic clocks are quite developed and they are there in the market. With regards to quantum sensors, which is the next coming field, the physics is quite known, the engineering we are still developing, and the market, it's still quite emerging, so as to say, it's growing. With communication, we are still learning the physics, the engineering isn't fully developed, and market currently is non-existent, though there is a good amount of investment. And same goes even with computing. So the physics is known, the engineering we are developing, and market does not exist yet. All of this being said, a lot of progress has already happened in this area. So to put it in very simple perspectives, for quantum computing, we are somewhere in the era of say 1950s to 1960s, where we had these, vacuum tubes and these kind of technology, and we were building some basic computers, like that were of the size of say the whole building, and all they could do was basic multiplication and division. And we were like, yeah, okay, that's not impressive. So quantum computing somewhere there right now, it's not impressing us because the technology is still primitive, but in the upcoming few decades, it will do the revolutions that the normal computers did for the 20th century. So, with these promises, there are a lot of companies that are already putting a lot of money into it. A few big players that you know is Google, for example. You have IBM, Honeywell, lots of them. So there are companies that you already know, for example, Amazon, Microsoft, Intel, and then there are lots of startups as well. So IQM in Finland, for example, you have D-Wave in Canada. Lots of startups coming up. There are startups in India as well. We will see that. Um, and then, so these were about the startups. Similarly, even governments are spending a lot of money into the quantum technology. So globally, around 22, these are in $1 million. Uh, Please keep that in mind. That's a typo on my side. So these are so the globally we have $22 billion being invested, and Where is India on that level? So here it is, $1,000 million, so $1 billion that have been invested into quantum computing. And even though this may not seem extraordinarily huge on a global scale, but it is still quite huge, given where we stand at present and how much development we can do with the money that is available with us. So, as said, India has already started this national mission on quantum technologies, which was announced in the 2020 budget of the nation. 8,000 Indian crores, that's 900 million euros, for a period of 5 years. And 5 years is actually a very small period. So, in terms of research, that's like one PhD, right? So, you can expect a lot of boom happening in this area. You can expect a lot of growth happening in this area in coming few years. And there are a lot of institutes in India that have been given some flagships to take forward. So there's IISc, which is like leading this whole quantum technology. You have Raman Research Institute, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. They're working a lot in superconducting qubits. You have ICER Pune, that is also working a lot in quantum materials, and it has a iHub actually they have started for fabrication and all different technologies. You have IIT Bombay as well. IIT Bombay, interestingly, is working on quantum biology, and that's a really fascinating thing, which I do not have time right now to discuss, but it's super cool. It's to understand how birds navigate using quantum technology. It's fascinating. And then, apart from these research institutes, you also have certain government research organizations like ISRO and DRDO that are both working in quantum communications. And okay, so now that we know the global scenario and where the money comes and goes, here's the deal. Where do we as researchers stand? So on one side, you have these theoretical researchers like Sheldon Cooper who are just like solving equations on Blackboard. And then on the other side, you have Leonard Hofstadter doing some actual experimental physics. You setting up lasers and some, sensors and all these things to actually calibrate stuff and to demonstrate what the theoreticians are predicting or expecting. So with that in mind, there's a whole new engineering that is coming up, which is quantum engineering. And this would be really fascinating. So from those who are in engineering technology, this is something that you all will find fascinating. So in each of the quantum technologies, so quantum sensing, information theory, simulations, communication, computation, in each of these domains, you have different stacks, right? So first there is this theory and design. So the theory is just basic physics, design is how to implement it, and from there you can like talk about fabrication, electronics packaging, and then testing these things, and then actually commercializing that with production. So this is like how every technology goes, irrespective of whether it is quantum or even your like normal automotive cars. They all go from lab research and lab testing to actual commercial production. So in this whole stack, everywhere there'll be role of engineers, and these engineers are nowadays called as quantum engineers because they do a lot of quantum engineering. What this quantum engineering is, we will see. So aside of quantum engineers who will be actually dealing with quantum stuff, there are certain quantum enablers. So these are people who are working in their individual domain of say mechanical engineering, electronics, electrical engineering, the traditional engineering that we know. Nothing quantum there, but they will develop technology that will be helpful for quantum computing or quantum technology. It's just like, for example, um, let's say in automotive industry, not every company is actually making cars. There are certain companies that are only making electronic components for cars, right? So it's something like that. So for example, there are lots of mechanical challenges which mechanical engineers can take care of, um, electrical challenges and electronic challenges. So in mechanical, you have cryogenics, vibration damping, and certain very exotic material of which we need specific properties. And these does not have to do anything with quantum in general, but normal stuff that we study in our engineering books, and that can help us realize this quantum technology. For electrical, it's microwave engineering because everything is RF in the quantum world. You need high sensitivity measurements for voltage, current, and these different parameters. And you also need some certain superconducting components, and the electrical engineering of that is quite different. For electronics, you need devices, say BJT, MOSFET, and these kind of amplifiers to work on 4 Kelvin. So it's cryoelectronics, so as to say. And that that has its own different challenges, which I'm not going to go into right now. And then you have RF analog circuit designs, which are required to um, uh, implement certain measurements that you want to perform on your devices, and then PID controllers for feedback and control of your systems. So yeah, so these are different enablers that can realize this. So now we saw quantum engineers who are actually working on this technology, and then we saw these enablers who are not working on quantum but who are helping realize quantum, and both are a part of this quantum world. Both are contributing, and then it's up to you which path do you want to choose. And with that in mind, let's see what education would you need in quantum technology. So there are these on the right, you can see this image taken from internet, where different domains, generic domains like maths, physics, chemistry, engineering, have their subdomains that go into the area of quantum. So with that in mind, there are certain masters in which you can specialize both in India and abroad, which are in engineering physics, which are in quantum physics, quantum engineering, quantum computing, microfabrication, MEMS, and that stuff, and nanoscience and nanotechnology. So this is the masters which I did. Sorry. So you can do these. You can apply for these masters at various universities in Europe, in USA, and as a specialization in these fields, you can choose an application towards quantum technology. So, for example, people in engineering physics usually take up their master thesis in photonics, or again in various different quantum technologies, or in nanoscience, people will go for again for photonics, phononics. These are again different quantum technologies which I did not describe about, but there's a lot of scope with specialization in these fields. One thing that here I would like to emphasize and take some time on is this. Usually people think that, okay, I'm a mechanical engineer, which masters can I choose? Or I'm an electronics engineer, what masters can I choose? And this is usually a stereotype, or like a mental block that we have, especially in India, because that is how the uh, uh, academic stack is layered. However, that is not the case if you are applying abroad. Usually the background is not so relevant. It is relevant but not super relevant, as long as you have an interest and you know what you're getting into. So rather than seeing I'm a mechanical engineer and then narrowing down your options right at that point, rather try the other way around. I want to achieve this. I want to say work in quantum. I want to become a quantum physicist, or I want to work in superconducting qubits, or I want to do some quantum computing at Google. Whatever aim you have, keep that in mind, and then reverse chalk out, like, okay, to reach here, what qualifications do I need and how can I go through that. So there are different universities both globally and in India. The list I'm just throwing out over here, because this is not exhaustive. These are just some top institutes that I'm showing. Of course, most of them are the global ones are in USA, but there are lots of good universities in Europe as well that are working in this field. And as a bachelor's in engineering, you can apply to one of these in the master's specialization that I mentioned earlier, and then you can get a lot of opportunities to work in different companies that are working in quantum technology. Uh, However, to even apply for these things, a good question would be, okay, so right now, what can I do? I'm a mechanical engineer, say in my second, third year, final year, or an electronics engineer. What skills can I start developing from now onwards to improve my chances to get a master's or an internship or whatever? So depending on your background as well as on your interest, there are different areas in which you can gain some expertise. Just even bookish knowledge can be sufficient at this point as a bachelor student. And then in theory, there's algorithms, machine learning, cryptography, architecture, computer architecture, which can be used for quantum computing later on. So if you have some good specialization, some deep understanding of any of these fields, that improves your profile for applying for masters. For design and analysis, for those who want to go into the design analysis part of quantum technology, programming skills are a must. If you can do some simulations in, say, thermodynamic simulations or electromagnetic simulations, that is also a plus point. Or designing analog circuits or microwave engineering, these are considered as very key crucial points for having a profile in quantum technology. And then on the experiment side, if you have some experience in material science, microfabrication, so there are people who have done internship at IISc Bangalore in microfabrication and characterization, and that really gives them some good boost when they apply for internships elsewhere, because then it shows that, yeah, you can work in clean rooms, and with that expertise you can work in the quantum technology and cryogenics, of course. So yeah, that's that. And now you know a little bit about the quantum world. You know what this buzzword means, what this technology entails in very layman terms. Where is the world standing? Where can we expect this technology to come up? And what are the different career opportunities that you can have, and how to actually be a part of that? I know this was a lot of information. I was just touching them very superficially. So now I'm open to questions and discussions, and we can take each and every question and go a little bit into deep points of each of them. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for an extensive presentation. That does answer a lot of our questions. Yeah, honestly, that did answer a lot of our questions.
Sure.
One main question that we got was that a lot of startups are coming in and around India, around the world, which are focused on research and development with quantum computing and related technologies.
Hmm.
And as you mentioned, that these are still in the budding stages. They are
Hmm.
not they're not out there in the market yet.
Hmm.
So, how do they get their finances, and how do they ensure that, they're having, like, they're maintaining a profit so that, it's, it's,
Okay.
it's still in the process. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so profit making is a whole different game right now. So that is why not many companies you would see emerging into the quantum technology. However, so here's the thing: most of the companies that are venturing in quantum technology, they are like rich companies, so they can afford it. They don't have to make profit yet. So Google is doing quantum computing like it's kind of a loss business right now, if you see it in just plain profit terms,
business
because they are not.
wise.
Yeah, exactly, because they're just making things, pouring money, but not generating anything. But in the long term, they will make a
Fair
lot of
invest.
money. Exactly. But they can afford that right now. Then there are startups, right, who do not have that kind of money. So what they do, most startups will then focus only on the consultancy part or on the computation part, algorithm part. So they will just come up with algorithms, and they'll say, okay, this is your requirement. For this requirement, we will develop some algorithms, and then you can implement it on a quantum computer. So then some of you might know that IBM's quantum computer, for example, or Amazon's quantum computer, they are available on cloud. So it's open to use. Anyone can use it right now. So it's like just logging into the into the website and using. So you can actually implement your algorithms on these IBM quantum computer. So this is what many people do, because then it is not super costly venture. And then there are certain startups who are actually doing some hardware stuff, but then they get a lot. They are either government startups, I mean the government spin-offs, so as to say, or they are getting some huge funding from the government, and then they start. So in that perspective, first thing, the business model is completely different. So then you cannot say that, yeah, okay, we will do something and within 6 months we are making money. No, that does not work. Then the business model, I mean, I'm not a expert in this domain, but here's something that people can do. Usually they come up with some intermediate goals. So it's like during the development of the startup, they will say that, yeah, okay, the task is to come up with say some XYZ technology, say for example material or design or whatever, that we will develop, and then let's say they will patent it, for example, and then they can sell the patent and make money. So this
Right.
is one thing that you can do, or then later on sell the company to someone else and encash it. So these are the things, but you cannot actually commercialize anything right now unless it is quantum sensing, which has a lot of commercial aspect even right now. So if you are making a startup in quantum sensing, you can commercialize it, but then your client will be defense and these companies. Very
Definitely.
niche. Yeah.
Geoinformatics, maybe.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Or even say companies that work in mining, for example, because even to mine, you need sensors that can detect
Definitely.
material quite deep, and then you would need very high sensitivity sensors.
Definitely. So, like, how many decades do you see in the future? When we start using these when all of our mainstream devices get replaced by these quantum
Ah,
computers.
that okay. So that's actually a good question. I should have touched upon it. It's good that you ask. Uh, that is not actually the plan. So let me first address the quantum computing question, and then I'll talk a bit about quantum technology in general. So first about quantum computing. This is not like normal computing. First of all, meaning that you should not expect that, yeah, okay, in some coming x number of days I will play my, I'll be playing games on quantum computer, or I will be like browsing my internet on quantum computers. That is not the aim. Quantum computer rather is a special type of processor, to put it in very simple terms, that has a very specific application. So certain type of computation that is ridiculously difficult to solve and very difficult for normal computers to implement, it will dump that part on the quantum computer, get the solution done, and then use it in normal computers. So in future what we can expect is you will have a computer which will have your normal stack and architecture. You will have RAM and everything and normal processor, and along with that you will have a quantum processor. But even then, the applications are not for your normal laptops and browsing and gaming. The applications are only for some certain niche technology. For example, there are aircraft companies, right? These Boeing and all of these that need to do some optimization solving. So, or for example, airlines companies. So there are this logistics, right? In computing world, it is known as the traveling salesman problem. And these problems are not so simple to solve using normal computers, because the complexity increases if you scale it up. And then for
Mhm.
that you will dump those problems only on quantum computer, get an optimum solution, and then do all the planning of your airlines. So this is how you would see it, to use it only for specific, very specific applications. Now now coming to the years, you're asking me when do I see this. If you remember, there was this slide where I was showing uh, atomic
Yeah,
clocks, sensors, communication, computing. So computing is very at the last. Atomic
um,
clocks we already have.
we will.
Sensors we have one or two that are used in some defense, which we do not know because it's confidential, and some sensors that we already know. But in the coming 5 to 10 years, sensors will be the biggest booming market, and followed by communication. So 10 years onwards, 10 to 20 years, let's say, communications will be quite a thing, because most of the defense companies are really putting their money into it, because they want to make their technology, say, impossible to crack, right? That is why China recently they uh, demonstrated this quantum communication, because it's like a defense advantage that you gain. And then 20 years plus, I would say that you can actually see some very uh, widespread use of quantum computing, and that would be in the domains of pharmaceutical and again defense, big data analysis, cryptography, for example, material analysis, space applications, and lots and lots. So that is the timeline, so as to say 5 to 10 years sensing, 10 plus communication, 20 to 30 years computing.
Right. So when you mentioned that it's computing is not exactly like a separate thing, but it's in addition to what's actually existing right now only. So I remember one of my friends, he had interned with IBM
Mhm.
on quantum computing only, and he told me that we have normal compilation in the computers,
Yeah.
and then we have transpilation.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
that is the difference.
Hmm, hmm,
Awesome,
hmm.
amazing. I think that would be it. But one last thing, I have a lot of friends who are
Mhm,
electronic engineers,
mhm.
budding electronic engineers, just like
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
And they were super pumped up during a presentation. And they asked, what if a second year student who is like me or like,
Mhm.
along my peers,
Yeah, yeah.
if they had to take one step forward in doing research in quantum computing, while in their bachelor's.
Hmm.
What's their way forward?
Ah, that's great. Uh, Okay, so as I said, it is completely. I would personally like to separate your bachelor's from what you want to do in future, because I know a lot of mechanical engineers like me who are working in qubits and stuff. Electronics engineers are writing codes like programming. So there is no, you can see there is no very tight
Definite
relation between.
process.
Yeah, exactly, it's not linked. So then it completely depends on what you want to do, whether you want to go into the theory side. If that is the path, then you can already start up with certain certification courses. There are like lots of edX course. There's this very popular edX course which is Introduction to Quantum Computing, something on that lines. That is also what I use for my flipped classroom, that's why I know. So there is nothing fancy. They're only talking about different implementations. So what is superconducting qubits, what is NV centers, what is spin qubits, what is topological qubits, and so on. And these different implementations are only touched upon, and then it will be your job to go a little bit more deeper, read more stuff, and familiarize yourself with different implementation strategies of qubits that you can do. You can do certain, depending on your interest. If you want to go in theory side, start learning linear algebra, because to understand quantum mechanics, like I'm not even talking computing now, just the plain mechanics, you need to have some basis of linear algebra, because quantum mechanics is linear algebra. Let's put it that way. That is the language of quantum mechanics to describe things. The Like all these wave functions are described as vectors, basically, yeah, like
Okay.
1D vectors. And then if you can understand these part, again it will give you a very nice theoretical background to read research papers and read articles, because right now it's all alien language, and that is what is daunting. So break that barrier, get acquainted with these buzzwords, get acquainted with the math. Once you know these two things, the buzzword and the math, you can already explore things on your own. So that would be the first thing to start with. If possible, do some certifications, and then additionally, if you get some this time period during your between in semester uh, window, where you can do some, say, 1 month 2 month internship, you can contact certain startups that are in India. Unfortunately, I did not speak about a lot of startups, but there's this boson psi, it is q boson psi, something like that. There are various different startups. There's Krishi, and one more. So
Rishi,
there are
yeah,
like, yeah, exactly. So there are like lots of startups which I did not talk about, but you can like literally Google them up, and you can discuss with them like if they have any internship opportunities. There's IISc Bangalore, and if you can apply there as well, or these different institutes like Raman, TIFR, which I mentioned. If you can do internships there, do some collaborative projects with them. Excellent. Like these are some initial profile building things that you can do, and that is just fantastic for your future.
definitely. All right, one last thing,
Sure, sure.
you talked about a journey, and you obviously guided us a lot. Thank you for that.
My
Who
pleasure.
was your inspiration, or who was your role model along this way, and who do you look up to as a mentor?
Okay, that's actually that's a very interesting question. In the field of quantum technology, I would say Richard Feynman, and that is because the man was really legendary. I have actually read his biography of Richard Feynman. Very impressive. I would really recommend people to read that. But especially in the term of in the field of quantum computing or quantum technology, because the man was visionary. He had the vision which very few people had. So during the time of, say, 1940s and 1950s, during that, when Alan Turing was doing was coming up with this computer, he theorized. He said that instead of humans, because back then computer was a job. Like I would be a computer and I would be doing computations on hand. So
Hmm.
this is silly to think like, because today we have computers, a machine, right? And this was the pioneering thing of Alan Turing. He said, why are humans solving machine problems? Why not use machines
Machines, sir.
to solve machines? Makes sense, no? Because it's all logic, it's all mathematical, and you can program it, and that's great. And that is what we did. And then during the 1980s, Richard Feynman said something very similar, but in the context of quantum. He said, Today we are trying to understand quantum using these paper pen math equations and putting them on computers and trying to solve it, and the computer just pretty much gives up after a certain point because it's too difficult. Why not let quantum handle problems of quantum? Because quantum is physical, we have quantum things in reality, we have photons and electrons. Why not use these quantum particles and quantum systems to solve the job, to do the job of quantum? And that is pretty much what we are doing today. All quantum computers are basically quantum systems like photons and superconducting qubits and whatnot, that are solving problems of quantum, like how proteins fold, or like how can you find out an optimum solution going from exponential to polynomial, things like that. So that was really revolutionary, and that kind of insight is what a scientist needs in order to work in this field, that out of box thinking. So yeah, I really look up to that guy.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. Just a lot of thanks from all of us, all of the viewers who watched
My
you, and
pleasure.
thanks for guiding us.
My
Loved
pleasure.
you. I loved having you here, and yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. And thank you so much
Amazing.
for inviting. This was really fun. It was great interacting. Had this been live, it would have been even more fun, but this is great. We get to cover as many people as possible. So, yeah, and thanks to all the audience as well for joining in, watching, and interacting with all your questions. And thanks, Parth. Thanks, Atul, for organizing this and for inviting me. This
My
was
pleasure,
fun.
man. Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Amazing.